Hey friends, Chris again. You'll notice a different camera perspective today. I'm trying actually a different camera altogether. So you might notice slightly different visual quality, maybe not even doing me any favors. But this is actually an RF800 Canon. I've used this one for kind of B-roll shots, if you remember my E3 interviews from last year. It's not my DSLR Nikon D5100 or the webcam C920, but trying it out. I got a little adapter to try using this as a webcam just to compare and see. I'll continue to experiment in the time ahead. What I want to talk about today is actually the value of boredom. And this is something that I'm not alone in advocating for, having shared this point throughout, the years. But here's the deal. When I was very young, we had a TV, and I wasn't at a time in history where everyone had a 13-channel VHF tuner. But our TV we had in our living room did. And so this 13-channel clicker knob had no channel 1. Channel 2 didn't pick up. Channel 3 was just local ads, which leaves, like 10 actual channels on this thing to switch between. And of course, unlike Hulu or Netflix, where you could start any series or any show or any episode at the start of the show, when I'm changing through it, typically odds are good, especially when you're young and don't read time well yet, you're just kind of missed the beginning of whatever, and you're just trying to decide, do I want to pick up wherever this is at and keep watching the rest of the way through it? And if I didn't like what I saw, well, there was no way back then for me to try to start a petition or to tweet at the people and say, you should change it to be how I want it. Instead, I would change the channel to something else. I'd typically check 2 or 3 channels that had any hope of anything I'd like on it. Figure out, didn't like those either. And then the answer was, and this is the part I think is potentially missing when we have both infinite channels now, essentially, including YouTubes and Twitter and online information, and as well as infinite ways to voice our frustrations with inadequate content on message boards and forums and social media and comments and replies and emails and websites and articles and Medium posts and whatever. My next step was to turn it off and stop watching it and to feel bored. The answer was not then to find even other content to replace it, let alone to just stew in my unhappiness over what some television crews had developed under some executives and decided here was a product that would sell me advertisements. Instead, I got bored. And I think that a lot of good things can come from letting yourself stew in that boredom, and you don't want to stay in it. But until you start clamoring for solutions that aren't someone else's prepackaged content, that aren't what someone else has produced or put out or tried to sell you, what aren't someone else's story, that aren't someone else's product, but then figuring out, okay, well, now what? And it's in the same sort of way that I'm grateful that when I started programming for games, the internet was so rough, so early, so crude in its condition at the time, that this modern ailment of the big shiny, of always feeling drawn to like, ooh, what else stuff happening over here? I didn't see it, didn't know about it, had no idea. I was learning from books from the 1980s how to program games because that's what I had access to. And what that meant was the only way to climb out of boredom was to make something, to practice something, to rest, to walk, to go on an adventure. These are all things that it's going to sound probably like I'm the annoying neighbor, the grandpa with the back in my day or whatever. Kids don't play outside anymore or whatever, which I'm not like that. That's not the point today. My point is that when we have these feelings of frustration with content around us and it not being good, I would encourage exploring ways to extinguish those feelings, not through finding different content, not through expressing frustration with the inadequacies of that content, because you may well be right, it may be bad. It may just be not well put together. And I also get that maybe the answer isn't, well, then go make your own show, because I understand you don't have this connection, so the budget or whatever. But you can still find some other way to extinguish those discontented feelings, that boredom, without suppressing it under somebody else's different content, without making it about a reaction to someone else's content, without living in service of someone else's vision. And to instead start to explore from that, somehow doing anything else. It doesn't even have to be making something. It doesn't have to be bettering yourself. It doesn't have to be crafting or creating anything. It can just be living life, can be resting, can be so many other things can spawn from, in a useful way, boredom. And I know it can seem weird when my focus obviously is largely on tech things and entertainment, digital toys, and all those kind of deals, but yeah, let yourself be bored. And in the struggle of solving that, I think there's a lot of good to be found. And that's it. I think it's hard for me to ramble more about this without further outing my just how old I probably am compared to how I normally look. Also note that because it's a higher quality camera, my age probably shows a little closer here than it does on the webcam, which has kind of a friendly blurring effect by no intention of my own. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. As always, we'll keep hanging out. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.